The nation wanted on now. Favorite coming up so you can telekinesis moving the crowd. I done took all the bleach to people they need to sit off the ground. We be fighting the bleeding.
No More Sleep Game Script is all about helping you with your fantasy football week-to-week lineups. Our philosophy has always been to give you numbers, give you data so that you can make an informed decision. You don't want to pay too much attention about, who to start and who to sit, and you see these names of individuals from these different resources, and all of a sudden that person gets injured or, something else happened like retirement or they get cut, whatever the case is. The best thing to do is focus on something that doesn't change, and game script normally does not change. Coaches don't get injured. Okay, so coaches will typically come in and their game script will be specifically made for each opponent, but there are trends there that will tell us what to expect. In today's video, we're going to focus on week 1 matchup between the Titans and the Browns. Both teams have plenty of upside players that, we can spend a ton of time on. But again, we're going to focus on some of the game scripts. So there are 3 main conclusions that we have when it comes to if you have any players on the Titans team or if you have any players on the Browns team. Now, before we go to the conclusions, let's dig into the Titans just a little bit. Some of the strengths that we saw in the Titans in 2018, and we will have to focus on the individual teams because the last time they saw each other was October 2017. So too many changes happened since then. So what we're going to do is break down the strengths and weaknesses of both teams and then give you a compiled conclusion at the end. So some of the strengths with the Titans in 2018, obviously rushing was one of the strengths. Now, granted, Derrick Henry started off very slow, and then at the end, he eventually picked up, apparently after he got some advice from Eddie George, which is actually in itself a little concerning because the advice was effectively to risk your body more, right? So to be a bulldozer out there on the field. That's a little concerning given the fact that Derrick Henry has seen some injuries before, and we are seeing a higher rate of running backs get injured with that running style. But nonetheless, the running has been a strength for the Titans. They were ranked number 9 as far as rushing attempts per game, so the opportunity will be there for Derrick Henry, Dion Lewis, or whoever you have at the time, whoever is relevant. They were ranked number 7 in rushing yards per game. They were ranked number 11 in rushing TDs. So pretty much in every rushing stat that you can look at, they did a great job at. So if you have a running back on a Titans team, just understand that that is one of their strengths, and they will probably play off of that strength. Now, when it comes to some of the other areas that they did well in, it was their defense. And I don't know why the Titans defense don't get a lot of credit, but they, on paper, perform very well when you look at the averages of other teams. I think part of the reason is because they did a great job in a lot of things, so they were kind of middle of the pack. But there are some things that really stood out. So, for example, their defense was 4th best against the rush. So when you look at pretty much every stat, but one of the ones that was glaringly a highlight for them was the rush against the defense against rushing of 20-plus yards. So they did an amazing job defending rushes of 20-plus yards. They also were allowed the 8th least amount of receptions. So their cornerbacks, their DBs, are remarkably good at disrupting the receiver's routes as well as making it tougher for the receiver to find separation and therefore make the catch. The Titans did an amazing job last year against receivers in the reception category. And they were also very good at stopping the receiver from getting the yards after catch. So they were 6th best against receiving yards per game. Now, some of the weaknesses on the Titans team, and then we'll talk about how it compares to the Browns. Now, receiving was horrific stat for them last year, and you'll be surprised at what I'll tell you in a second. But let's talk about the numbers. So they were ranked pretty much dead last in receiving yards per game. Only 2 teams were worse. They were ranked pretty much dead last in receiving touchdowns. Only 4 teams were worse. They were at the bottom of the pack for receptions, the bottom of the pack for receiving yards of 20-plus yards. The list goes on. The glaring weakness on this offense is obviously receiving. And you would think, okay, well, maybe the issue is Marcus Mariota. When you see something like this, you would think that maybe it's the quarterback, but it's not actually his fault. And it's not the O-line either, because we know the O-line has done a great job on the run block efficiency. So typically you don't see an amazing run block efficiency and very bad pass efficiency. There's typically some of the same skill sets that you need for both areas. Now, when you look deeper, it wasn't necessarily Mariota's fault. And here's what I mean by that. Mariota he had the second highest score you can have for accuracy. So 3 out of the 4 times when you take out drop passes, he was one of the most accurate. In fact, he was ranked top 12 as far as accuracy. And if you foster out the drop passes, which was one of the biggest issues last year, his passer rating is 94.5 when you take those drop passes out. So what was the issue? Well, drop passes. The Titans saw a ton of drop passes last year. They were ranked number 19 in drop passes. And a lot of that happened in the red zone, which made Mariota's red zone efficiency, pass efficiency, very bad. The other thing is that he had a low supporting cast efficiency. So when you look at the supporting cast, taking out Derrick Henry's rushes, I don't think it's fair to look at a running back, because the quarterback doesn't have anything to do with that. They just hand the ball off. But if you take out Derrick Henry, if you look at a supporting cast, they all, the weighted average was very low compared to the NFL average. So the supporting cast was the issue. Now, we know that they've added some talent to that team. I really like the add of some of the receivers they put there, because these receivers are very good in the short to medium range, which is where many of these drop passes took place. Ironically, the best percentage of catch rate happened in the deep ball section. So, and that's part of the reason why Mariota was ranked, I think, top 10 in deep ball pass accuracy. So the funny thing is that the supporting cast for the Titans, they caught very well with the deep ball, but they did a horrible job in a short to intermediate range. But hopefully the additions to that team, these receivers specifically who they've added, who has that strength, will maybe help them out. Now let's go over to the Browns. I'll make this one shorter, and then we'll talk about the overall consensus of how to make a decision on who to start and who to sit. On the Browns, obviously the pros were the receiving. So they were number 2 in receptions. Actually, it wasn't the receiving only. So I'm going to start with the rushing, because I think Nick Chubb and that backfield last year didn't get enough recognition. So they were number 2 in rushing attempts of rushing yards of 20 plus or more. So they led the league in 20 plus rushing yards or more. They led the league. They were second in rushes of 40 plus or more. So the consensus here is that the Browns are top rated when it comes to big rush plays. Okay, so keep that in mind. Secondly, they were top rated in rushing attempts. Rushing TDs. So, and then the rushing attempts, they were pretty much in the top 30%. So rushing was actually very good last year for the Browns, and it honestly, in my opinion, was part of the reason why they were even successful with passing the ball. But if you move on to passing the ball, obviously Baker Mayfield has good accuracy, but the story here is that they were number 7 in receiving average, so that's great. With that accuracy came the receivers trusting their quarterback, and therefore breaking in their routes a lot deeper than they would have before. So their receiving average was number 7 across the league, and they were ranked number 11 in receiving touchdowns and ranked number 6 in receptions of 20 plus yards, which we expect given that they have a high receiving average. Now, the cons on the Browns team, you will hear that the Browns have a good defense, but they have a good defense based on game stats, right? And game stats is about whether you won a game or not. Those are kind of stats that you look at. But when you look on paper as far as rushing and receiving defense, there's a lot of red flags. So first off, the Browns allowed the 5th highest amount of rushing average, the 5th highest rushing attempts per game, the 5th highest rushing yards per game. They allowed the 2nd most rushing touchdowns. You heard me say rushing so many times, right? You can basically start any running back against the Browns, all right? But we'll talk about the specific type of running backs you want to start. The next area was when it comes to game script, you got to look at time of possession and what goes into it. First downs are a major part of time of possession. Well, the Browns allowed the fourth highest amount of first down efficiency. So running backs were able to effectively guarantee getting a first down against the Browns when they were in a third down situation. So from a game script perspective, teams that play the Browns, when they're third down, they're probably not going to pass the ball. They're probably actually going to rush the ball. So that's good news for whatever running back you have playing against the Browns, especially if that running back is a bell cow or receives the first and second down work. And then lastly, what about against the pass? Yes, they got the Warden, Denzel Ward, who did a great job in his first year, and they obviously had safety Jabril Peppers at the time. And they've been adding to that core. But last year they allowed the fourth most receptions and I believe the eighth most receiving yards per game. So they were bad against the pass as well. So that's the strengths and weaknesses of both teams. Let's put it all together so that you can make an informed decision. There are three conclusions. The first conclusion is expect many rushing attempts. So we expect a minimum of 27 rushing attempts per team. So if you have a running back who rely on rushing attempts, so that means that if they're one of their strengths, and you can go to Player Profiler to look this up, but just look at carries. You don't even have to do that. Go to NFL.com, look at stats, and see if this running back ranks in the top 30% of running backs when it comes to the amount of carries that they had in 2018. If it's a rookie running back, then obviously look at their comparison with their college cohort. The reason why, again, is because these two teams seem to share a similar opportunity. I won't call it a weakness, but opportunity to maybe put a running back in who like to pound the ball over and over and over again. Both teams seem to give way after each carry. Now, the other part about this, there's some subtopics to the many rushing attempts. You want to look at yards per carry as well. Okay, both teams against rushing allowed more than 4 yards per carry. So if you can get a running back with a 4.3 rushing average, okay, we did the math already for you. If you can get a running back with a 4.3 rushing average, and they have either a large amount of snap share, so with running backs we'll say 66%, at least 66% or more snap share, and or they have a lot of carries, so they're in the top 30% of carries, that's someone that you can start either on the Brown side or on the Titan side. Conclusion number 2 is touchdown upside. There is touchdown upside on a rushing as well as on a receiving. However, the upside is specific to each team. On a rushing side, the upside is more so for the Titans because of the Browns' lack of ability to defend the rush, especially if you can get an early down back because of the first down efficiency that I just told you about. Coaches love to put early down backs in when there is a weakness on an opponent's first down efficiency. So Derrick Henry, for example, you will not expect him to be in on third down, except maybe against the Browns he probably will be, because you don't need him to catch the ball, right? You don't need to put in Dion Lewis because we know the Browns does a horrible job defending the rush on third down. So again, we're not telling you who to start, but we're saying from a game script perspective, you can expect early down backs to stay in on third down. On the receiving side, the upside is for the Browns, again, because their strengths were on the receiving side, and they obviously added more weapons to that offense. So the receiving average that you want to look for amongst all these receivers that's on that team, if you're playing against the Titans, then what the receiving average you want is 11 yards or more. If you can get 11 yards or more, that's that sweet spot for the Titans. They don't really allow anything below that. They definitely don't allow a ton of those afterwards. So if you can get the person with the closest to 11 yards, why? That means that individual is used to running routes that get them 11 yards per reception. That means that they will naturally play well in that zone against this team. So get a receiver who's the closest to 11 yards per reception. So look at receiving average if you go to NFL.com stats. Conclusion number 3 is the battle of the offensive coordinators. Both teams have new offensive coordinators, and they will play an important part in the game script. Arthur Smith on the Titans side, he has been on that squad for a while, but this is his first year as an offensive coordinator. There are 3 things that he's probably going to be focused on if you look at how he's coached in the past. The first is going to be quality. So he's going to focus on penalties. Don't expect the Titans to commit a lot of penalties in his game against the Browns, which means they will probably not give too many opportunities for the Browns to capitalize on. So expect game script, time of possession to be part of the mindset here coming into the game, which means rushing attempts for the Titans running back. The second thing Arthur Smith will probably be focused on is tight end involvement. And I know there are no seriously, big names on the Titans tight end list. Obviously, Delaney Walker had that great year, but he's also old and was injured. So one can argue that he's not a big name in fantasy. However, given the fact that Arthur Smith was the tight ends coach last year, and under Arthur Smith, the Titans saw the second highest amount of tight end involvement. So 30% of the snap share went to tight ends. That's the second highest, only behind the Philadelphia Eagles. Also, Arthur Smith loved to use tight ends in blocking schemes to open up lanes, which is his third focus, rushing lanes. You can expect tight end involvement. Which tight end to grab? You want to get the one with the snap share, and you want to get the one with the best O-line block efficiency. So run block efficiency is going to be a great thing. They will have opportunities to get some passing in that situation as well. And then the third thing I already talked about is rushing lanes. Arthur Smith loves to open up rushing lanes, which means if you can get a back who has a good breakaway run rate, that's good. But honestly, the most important thing is going to be, does this back have a good rushing average? And does this back know how to be consistently patient with that offensive line? You don't want a back who has a high juke rate. Okay, and you can find that out. You can look up juke rate. If you have a running back on the Titans who has a high juke rate, you don't want that against the Browns. What you want is a running back who has block efficiency and good rushing average. Now, Todd Monken on the Browns. He's new offensive coordinator. His first year as an offensive coordinator with the Browns, full year. And you can expect 3 things that he'll be focused on. The first is going to be wide receivers. So he was the wide receiver coach for Tampa Bay. As you know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers led the league in passing, and they produce very good wide receivers last year. Hence the reason why Chris Godwin is all of a sudden shooting up the ranks, and Mike Evans had one of his best years ever last year. So you can expect him to put a ton of focus on the receivers. They will like to throw the ball a lot. They will love to get these receivers out there, and these receivers are capable, obviously. But again, one of the strengths for the Titans is defending receptions. They do not allow a lot of receptions. They don't allow a lot of receiving yards. However, given that Todd Monken is here, he probably won't care and have Baker Mayfield, have like 60 attempts in this game. So keep that in mind. The second thing that Todd Monken will focus on is air yards. So he will be expecting Baker Mayfield to throw the ball deep a whole lot more than he did last year. So if you got a receiver who is a deep threat, that's a good thing. And then lastly, I already talked about it, passing attempts. Todd Monken loved to have his quarterback throw the ball quite a lot. Now, does that hurt the Browns running back in this game against the Titans? Possibly. However, if the running back, as I already said, has a rushing average of 4.3 or more, is in the game when it comes to third downs, and has seen a lot of attempts last year. So they have a lot of carries, or they have a high snap share. That's going to be a good thing for that running back. I will put him in because, again, we expect 27 rushing attempts for both sides when it comes to rushing. This was a long video, but there's a lot when it comes to the Titans and the Browns, and I know people have a lot of players on those teams. So take the information, make a smart decision. If you all ever have questions, feedback, whatever, feel free to go to nmsfootball.com. So nmsfootball.com, and send us an email or whatever the case may be. You can ask your questions or just drop a comment in a video on YouTube, and we'll get back to you. No more sleep.
Go get it, I got it. Get it, go get it, I got it. Get it, go get it, I got it.